In this lecture, we're going to take a look at business applications. Specifically, we're going to show how to use Microsoft Excel. For the next couple of lectures, we're actually going to take a look at a particular application that's used in business called Microsoft Excel. You've probably used this before, but we're going to go into more details about exactly what you can do with this program. Excel is an application that allows us to manage spreadsheets. And in Excel, these spreadsheets are referred to as worksheets. So don't be surprised if we just interchange the term spreadsheet and worksheet. The workbook itself is a file that contains many different worksheets or spreadsheets, and this can include all sorts of text, numbers, formulas, and functions, and it's really great for performing calculations. Now, you may be asking, why Microsoft Excel? Why are we talking about that as a business application? Well, in the business environment, because remember, as information system majors, you are going to be doing stuff most likely in the business administrative type area. We need a way to manage and calculate data. And Microsoft Excel is one of the most common and simplest programs that allows us to manage this data. In fact, spreadsheets are used in several different areas of business. It's used for budgets, it's used for accounting and payroll, it's used for analyzing data, and even looking at different types of trends in the data. So, quite frankly, Excel is a really great way of handling this data that we can use in all sorts of areas of business. We'll first take a look at some of the key components of an Excel program. So here's an image of a spreadsheet that's opened up. So this is using Excel 2013. Now you may be using a different version of Excel, and that's perfectly fine. But here we're going to use Excel 2013. So the active cell, which is where the arrow is pointing to, this is the cell that you have currently selected. And you can tell it's the active cell because there's a little box around the actual cell. There's a little colored border, and here it's a little green border. That way you know that is the particular cell that you have selected. And we have the name box, which is way up top where that drop-down menu is. In the picture, I think it's labeled as I6, and this lets us know the actual cell that we have selected. So in this case, the active cell is I6, so that's going to show up in the name box. The formula bar is that big bar right there where the arrow is pointing at, and this tells us the contents that's in the current active cell. Now, this could be text, it could be a number, or in this particular case, it's actually an equation that we'll talk more about that a little bit later on, but this tells us what exactly is in that cell. We have the sheet tabs down here. Now, in this particular example, we have one sheet tab, but we can have as many sheet tabs as we want in this particular workbook, so each tab would correspond to its own spreadsheet. Then we have the column headings. So this just pretty much lets us know the columns that we have for our spreadsheet, and these are labeled using letters of the alphabet. We have the row headings over here, and these are labeled using numbers, so this lets us know the rows that we have for our spreadsheet. And then we have the ribbon, which is pretty much, I know it's pointed like right in the middle up there, but pretty much all the contents up there is considered the ribbon. And so this gives us all the features such as changing the font, the size, merging and centering text. And then we have all sorts of tabs up top to give us some additional features such as adding things, adding formulas, changing the page layout, and so forth. But the whole area up top is what we consider the ribbon. And then we have the dialog box launcher. Now we're pointing at one small example, but each section of the ribbon has a dialog box launcher, which would open up additional properties that we can use for depending on what group we're looking at. So like in this particular example, we're in this number group, and if we click on that particular dialog box launcher, it would give us some more formatting options for the numbers that's going to be displayed in the current cell. To navigate in the spreadsheet, we can use the arrow keys to move it up and down or left and right to the other cells. You could also use the mouse to click on the cell you want. That also works too. And we can even use the page up and page down keys to move the active cell up or down one screen. The home key can be used to move the active cell to column A. Now, the row number would remain the same, but if you need to jump to the first column, you can do that using the home key. Now, if you need to get to the very first cell, A1, you can use Control and Home at the same time. It would move the active cell to A1. And then Control N would do the exact opposite of that, where it would move the active cell to the right lowermost active corner. If we want to create a new spreadsheet, we need to go to the File tab, which in Office 2013 or Excel 2013 is found right here. So you would click on that tab, and then from there you would select the New option. And from there you can create a blank workbook, or you can even use a template. To save a spreadsheet, you can click on the disk icon in the top left corner. So that would be this icon right here. So we can click that. You could also use the Control S key combination to save if you want to. And you can even select the File tab and then either select Save, or you can even save as if you want to name it as a different type of file. But we have a couple options for saving your spreadsheet files.
Let's take a look at an example of how we can work with our spreadsheets and just some of the very basic features we can do. So this right here is Excel. And so all we have to do here is we can just type in stuff in our different cells if we want to add data to it. So if we want to add data to a particular cell, we can simply click on it. So like in this example, we are clicking on E5, and there's a couple ways we can tell that we're working with cell E5. So we see that we have the green box around a particular cell. That lets us know that we have that particular cell picked. This is what we call the active cell. We can also tell through our column and our row headers that we can see that column E is grayed and has a little green line under it. That lets us know that we're currently selecting a cell in column E. And we also see that we have the 5 that has it's a bit grayed and has a little green line right here. That also lets us know that we have a cell in row 5 selected. We can also tell through up here that we can tell which cell we have. So here we can tell that we have a E5 also selected. So if we want to actually enter data in here, well, I can just type as I want to right now. So I can say something like hello. I can even click up here in the formula bar. So I could put something like hi. So we can just add all sorts of data that we want to. And so the whole point here is just you can just simply click whichever cell you want, or you can even use the arrow keys. So right now I'm using the arrow key even though you can't see it, but I can do that to change what cells I want. You can even use tabs if you want to move over one column in the cell. The one thing you gotta be very careful though is dealing with the different types of data that can be stored in a cell. So by default, if we look under this number group here, it's set to general, which just simply means that it can be whatever you want. But if we use a different type, for example, then it's going to look a little differently. So let's say, for example, let's just take a look here and see what we got. So general means there's no specific format. We can format something as a number. It could be a currency, accounting, short date, long date, time, percentage, fraction, scientific, and so forth. Let's say I pick something like short date. So right now, G5 in this case is formatted as a date. So if I enter something like 123, and then I can hit enter, well, it's going to give me May 12th, 1990. And that's just because even though I hit 123, it's formatting that as a date. And to be perfectly honest, why 123 turns into May 2, 1900, I'm sorry, I think I said 1990 earlier. I have honestly no idea why. So the whole point here is just making sure that you use the proper formatting. So we can come in here, we can actually change it back to general, so it gives us the 123. So just be careful in making sure that you put in the appropriate data for whatever type it's asking for.
If we want to apply borders to our cells, we can actually find this in the font group in the Home tab. So here's an image of the font group, and specifically the icon we want is this one right here. This actually allows us to specify the borders in our cells. So this will actually allow us to specify line thickness. It allows us to specify styles, so whether we want solid lines or dashed lines or even dotted lines, or even double like thick lines or double lines. There's all sorts of styles out there, and we can even choose which sides are bordered. So if you want just the left border or the right border or a box or some other combination, but we have all those options available to us.